The planet was silent, a barren wasteland of jagged rocks and swirling dust storms. The sky burned a deep crimson, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. In the distance, a faint trail of smoke rose into the air, marking the crash site of a strange, alien vessel. The Deathworlder emerged from the wreckage, their massive frame silhouetted against the fiery sky. They were the last of their kind, or so they believed. For centuries, they had wandered the galaxy, searching for others like them. But every planet they visited was empty, every civilization they encountered long gone. As they stepped onto the cracked ground, their sharp senses picked up something unusual, a faint vibration beneath their feet. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The Deathworlder crouched low, pressing a clawed hand to the ground. The vibrations grew stronger, leading them toward a nearby cave. The cave was dark and damp, the air thick with the scent of decay. But as the Deathworlder ventured deeper, they noticed something strange. The walls were covered in markings, intricate symbols carved into the stone. They traced the symbols with their claws, feeling a strange sense of familiarity. At the center of the cave, they found it, a small, metallic object, partially buried in the dirt. The Deathworlder picked it up, turning it over in their hands. It was a human artifact, a relic from a civilization they had never encountered. For the first time in centuries, the Deathworlder felt a flicker of hope. They were not alone. The Deathworlder held the human artifact tightly, their mind racing with questions. How had it ended up here? Were there humans still alive, or was this just another remnant of a lost civilization? The artifact was small, no larger than their palm, with strange symbols etched into its surface. It hummed faintly, as if it still held some power. The Deathworlder decided to investigate further. They left the cave and began scanning the area, using their heightened senses to detect any signs of life or technology. The planet was harsh, with little vegetation and no visible water sources. It seemed unlikely that anyone could survive here for long. As they moved across the rocky terrain, memories of their past flooded their mind. They remembered their homeworld, a place of towering mountains and endless oceans. They remembered their people, strong and proud, who had thrived in the face of constant danger. But they also remembered the day it all ended, the day an alien fleet descended upon their world, leaving nothing but ash and ruin. The Deathworlder shook their head, pushing the memories aside. They couldn't afford to dwell on the past. Not now. Hours passed as they searched, and just as they were about to give up, they found something, a hidden entrance, concealed beneath a pile of rocks. The Deathworlder cleared the debris and stepped inside, their eyes adjusting to the dim light. The chamber was vast, filled with strange machines and towering structures. The walls were lined with more human symbols, glowing faintly in the darkness. At the center of the room stood a massive console, its surface covered in buttons and screens. The Deathworlder approached the console cautiously, their claws hovering over the controls. They hesitated for a moment, then pressed a button. The console came to life, its screens flickering with images and text. The images showed humans, tall, slender beings with soft features and determined eyes. They were building, exploring, fighting. The Deathworlder watched in awe as the screens displayed scenes of human ingenuity and resilience. They saw humans colonizing distant worlds, battling alien threats, and forging alliances with other species. But there was something else, something that made the Deathworlder's heart race. The screens showed a map of the galaxy, with a single planet highlighted in red. The planet was labeled Earth. The Deathworlder stared at the map, their mind reeling. Earth. The humans' homeworld. If it still existed, it could hold the answers they were looking for. But before they could investigate further, the console emitted a loud beep. The screens went dark, and the room was plunged into silence. The Deathworlder stepped back, their senses on high alert. That's when they heard it, a faint sound, like footsteps echoing in the distance. Someone, or something, was coming. The Deathworlder turned toward the entrance, their claws extended and ready for a fight. They didn't know who, or what, was approaching, but they were determined to find out. The footsteps grew louder, echoing through the chamber like a drumbeat. The Deathworlder crouched low, their muscles tense and ready to spring into action. Their sharp eyes scanned the entrance, searching for any sign of movement. A figure appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light. It was humanoid, but not human. Tall and slender, with smooth, metallic skin that shimmered in the darkness. The figure stepped forward, revealing glowing blue eyes and a face devoid of expression. The Deathworlder growled, a deep, rumbling sound that filled the chamber. The figure paused, tilting its head as if studying them. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, the figure spoke. Its voice was cold and mechanical, devoid of emotion. "Identify yourself." The Deathworlder hesitated. They hadn't expected this. "I am the last of my kind," they said, their voice rough and guttural. "Who are you?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised a hand, and a beam of light shot out, scanning the Deathworlder from head to toe. The beam lingered on the human artifact they still held in their claws. "You are not authorized to possess that," the figure said. "Surrender it immediately." The Deathworlder tightened their grip on the artifact. "No." The figure's eyes glowed brighter, and it took a step forward. "Comply, or you will be neutralized." The Deathworlder bared their teeth, a low growl escaping their throat. They had faced countless enemies before, and they weren't about to back down now. The figure moved first, lunging forward with surprising speed. The Deathworlder dodged, their claws slashing through the air. They struck the figure's arm, but their claws barely made a scratch. The figure retaliated, its hand transforming into a blade that sliced through the air. The Deathworlder leaped back, narrowly avoiding the attack. They needed to think fast. This enemy was unlike anything they had faced before. As the figure advanced, the Deathworlder noticed something. The human artifact in their hand was glowing faintly. They didn't know why, but they had a feeling it might be their only chance. When the figure attacked again, the Deathworlder raised the artifact, holding it like a shield. The figure's blade struck the artifact, and a burst of energy erupted, sending both of them flying in opposite directions. The Deathworlder hit the ground hard, their vision blurring. They struggled to their feet, clutching the artifact tightly. The figure was also getting up, its movements slower now. Before the Deathworlder could react, a new voice echoed through the chamber. "Stand down." They turned to see a group of humans entering the room, their weapons trained on the figure. The humans were dressed in rugged armor, their faces set in grim determination. The figure hesitated, its glowing eyes flickering between the Deathworlder and the humans. Then, without a word, it turned and disappeared into the shadows. The humans lowered their weapons, but they didn't relax. One of them, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice wary. The Deathworlder straightened, meeting the man's gaze. "I am the last of my kind," they said. "And I believe we have a common enemy." The man studied them for a moment, then nodded. "We'll see about that. Come with us." The Deathworlder hesitated, then followed the humans out of the chamber. They didn't know what to expect, but one thing was clear, their journey was far from over. The humans led the Deathworlder through a series of narrow tunnels, their weapons still at the ready. The tension in the air was palpable, but the Deathworlder could sense that the humans were more curious than hostile. Finally, they emerged into a large, well-lit cavern. The space was filled with makeshift shelters, equipment, and a small group of humans going about their tasks. The Deathworlder's sharp eyes took in every detail, noting the humans' resourcefulness and determination. The scarred man turned to face the Deathworlder. "I'm Captain Yarrick," he said. "This is our outpost. Now, tell us who you are and what you're doing here." The Deathworlder hesitated, then spoke. I am the last of my kind. My people were destroyed by an alien empire, the same one that now threatens you. I came here searching for answers, and I found this. They held up the human artifact, its faint glow catching the attention of everyone in the room. Captain Jarek's eyes narrowed. That's one of our relics. Where did you find it? In a cave not far from here, the Deathworlder replied. It led me to a chamber filled with your technology. That's where I encountered the machine that attacked me. The humans exchanged uneasy glances. That machine is one of the Empire's drones, Yarek said. They've been scouring the planet, searching for us. If it knows you've been in contact with us, it won't stop until it eliminates both of us. The Deathworlder nodded. Then we have a common enemy. I propose an alliance. Together, we might stand a chance against them. Yarek studied the Deathworlder for a moment, then turned to his team. What do you think? A woman with short, dark hair stepped forward. We've been fighting a losing battle for months, she said. If they're willing to help us, we should take the chance. Yarek nodded, then extended a hand to the Deathworlder. All right. We'll work together. But if you betray us, you'll regret it. The Deathworlder grasped Jarek's hand, their massive claws dwarfing his. I have no intention of betraying you. My only goal is to stop the Empire. Over the next few hours, the humans filled the Deathworlder in on their situation. The alien empire had been expanding rapidly, conquering planets and enslaving their inhabitants. The humans had managed to escape their homeworld, but they were now scattered and struggling to survive. We've been gathering intelligence on the Empire's operations, Yarek explained. We know they have a stronghold on this planet, but we don't have the manpower to take it down. The Deathworlder's eyes gleamed with determination. Then we'll hit them where it hurts. I've faced their kind before. I know their weaknesses. The humans began to strategize, with the Deathworlder providing valuable insights into the Empire's tactics. They decided to launch a surprise attack on the stronghold, using the Deathworlder's strength and the humans' technology to their advantage. As the plan took shape, the Deathworlder couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie with the humans. They were resilient, resourceful, and determined, qualities the Deathworlder admired. But as they prepared for the mission, one of the humans, a young man with a nervous demeanor, approached the Deathworlder. I just want to say, thank you, he said. For helping us. We've lost so much already. It's good to know we're not alone. The Deathworlder nodded, a rare sense of warmth spreading through them. We're stronger together, they said. As night fell, the group set out for the Empire's stronghold. The Deathworlder led the way, their senses alert for any signs of danger. The humans followed closely, their weapons at the ready. They reached the stronghold just before dawn. It was a massive structure, towering over the landscape like a fortress. The Deathworlder could see drones patrolling the perimeter, their glowing eyes scanning the area. This is it, Yarek whispered. Once we're inside, we'll split up and plant the charges. Stick to the plan, and we'll make it out alive. The Deathworlder nodded, their claws flexing in anticipation. They were ready. As they approached the stronghold, the Deathworlder couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The drones seemed more alert than usual, and the air was thick with tension. But it was too late to turn back now. The mission was underway, and there was no room for hesitation. The group moved swiftly, using the cover of darkness to approach the Empire's stronghold. The Deathworlder led the way, their sharp senses detecting every movement in the shadows. The humans followed closely, their weapons ready and their faces set in grim determination. As they reached the perimeter, the Deathworlder signaled for the group to stop. They crouched low, observing the drones patrolling the area. The drones moved in a predictable pattern, their glowing eyes scanning the ground below. We'll take out the drones one by one, the Deathworlder whispered. Stay close and follow my lead. The humans nodded, and the Deathworlder moved forward, their claws extended. They struck quickly and silently, disabling the first drone before it could react. The humans followed suit, using their weapons to take out the remaining drones. With the perimeter clear, the group entered the stronghold through a hidden entrance. The interior was dimly lit, with narrow corridors and towering walls. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, and the faint hum of machinery echoed through the halls. "Remember the plan," Yarrick said, his voice low. "We split up here. Plant the charges and meet back at the rendezvous point in 30 minutes. The group divided into smaller teams, each tasked with planting explosives in key locations. The Deathworlder stayed with Yarrick and the young man who had thanked them earlier. As they moved through the corridors, the Deathworlder couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The stronghold was too quiet, too empty. It was as if the Empire was expecting them. "This doesn't feel right," the Deathworlder muttered. Yarrick nodded, his expression tense. "I know. But we don't have a choice. We need to complete the mission." They reached their target, a massive generator that powered the stronghold. The Deathworlder set the charge while Yarrick and the young man kept watch. Just as they were about to leave, the young man spoke up. I can't do this," he said, his voice trembling. Yarrick turned to him, his eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" The young man hesitated, then pulled out a small device. "I'm sorry," he said, pressing a button. Alarms blared throughout the stronghold, and the corridors were flooded with light. The Deathworlder and Yarrick turned to see a group of drones approaching, their weapons trained on them. "You betrayed us," Yarrick said, his voice filled with anger and disbelief. The young man backed away, his face pale. "I didn't have a choice. They have my family. They said they'd kill them if I didn't cooperate." The Deathworlder growled, their claws flexing. "We don't have time for this. We need to move." Yarrick grabbed the young man by the collar. "You're coming with us. You're going to help us fix this." The group ran through the corridors, the drones hot on their heels. The Deathworlder took out several drones with their claws, but more kept coming. "We're not going to make it," Yarrick said, his voice strained. The Deathworlder glanced at him, their eyes filled with determination. "Yes, we will. Follow me." They led the group down a side corridor, using their knowledge of the stronghold's layout to evade the drones. They reached a hidden exit just as the charges they had planted began to detonate. The stronghold shook violently, and the corridors filled with smoke and debris. The group barely made it out before the entrance collapsed behind them. As they caught their breath, Yarrick turned to the young man. "You're lucky we made it out alive," he said, his voice cold. "But this isn't over. You're going to help us make things right." The young man nodded, his eyes filled with guilt and fear. The Deathworlder looked at the burning stronghold, their expression grim. The mission had been a success, but at a great cost. They had lost the element of surprise, and the Empire would be on high alert. But they had also gained something valuable, a renewed sense of purpose. The humans had proven themselves to be brave and resourceful, and the Deathworlder knew they could trust them. As the group prepared to move out, the Deathworlder felt a flicker of hope. They were no longer alone in their fight against the Empire. Together, they stood a chance. The group moved quickly, putting as much distance as they could between themselves and the burning stronghold. The young man who had betrayed them walked in silence, his head bowed in shame. The others kept a wary eye on him, their trust shattered but their focus on survival overriding their anger. The Deathworlder led the way, their senses alert for any signs of pursuit. The Empire's drones were relentless, and it was only a matter of time before they regrouped and came after them. As they reached a rocky outcrop, Yarrick called for a brief rest. The humans were exhausted, their faces streaked with sweat and soot. The Deathworlder, though physically unharmed, felt the weight of the mission pressing down on them. Yarok approached the Deathworlder, his expression grim. "We need a new plan," he said. "The Empire knows we're here now. They'll be hunting us." The Deathworlder nodded. "We need to strike back before they can recover. But we'll need more than just explosives this time." Yarok frowned. "What do you suggest?" The Deathworlder hesitated, then spoke. "There's a weapon, a device my people used in the final days of our war. It's powerful enough to destroy the Empire's forces on this planet, but it requires a great sacrifice to activate." Jarek's eyes narrowed. "What kind of sacrifice?" The Deathworlder looked at him, their gaze steady. "It requires the life force of a Deathworlder. Only one of my kind can activate it." The humans fell silent, the weight of the Deathworlder's words sinking in. Yarok shook his head. "There has to be another way. We can't ask you to do that." The Deathworlder's expression softened. "You're not asking. I'm offering. My people are gone, but yours still have a chance. If this is the only way to stop the Empire, then I'll do it." The young man who had betrayed them stepped forward, his voice trembling. I want to help. I know I messed up, but I want to make things right." Yarok looked at him, his expression conflicted. "You've caused enough damage already. How can we trust you?" The young man lowered his head. "You can't. But I'll do whatever it takes to prove myself." The Deathworlder placed a clawed hand on the young man's shoulder. "Redemption is earned through action, not words. If you're serious about helping, then come with me." The group spent the next few hours preparing for the mission. The Deathworlder explained how the weapon worked and where it was located, deep within the Empire's territory, in a heavily guarded facility. As they approached the facility, the Deathworlder turned to Yarok. "This is where we part ways. Take your team and create a diversion. I'll handle the rest." Yarok hesitated, then nodded. "Good luck. And, thank you." The Deathworlder gave a slight nod, then turned and disappeared into the shadows. The humans launched their diversion, drawing the Empire's forces away from the facility. The Deathworlder moved swiftly, using their strength and agility to bypass the remaining guards. They reached the weapon, a massive, glowing device that pulsed with energy. The Deathworlder placed their claws on the control panel, feeling the device's power coursing through them. As they activated the weapon, memories of their people flooded their mind. They remembered their homeworld, their family, their friends. They remembered the day everything was taken from them. But they also remembered the humans, their courage, their resilience, their determination to fight for what was right. The weapon began to hum, its energy building to a crescendo. The Deathworlder closed their eyes, their body glowing with light. "For my people," they whispered. "And for yours." The weapon erupted in a blinding explosion of energy, engulfing the facility and the surrounding area. The Empire's forces were wiped out in an instant, their machines reduced to ash. As the light faded, the Deathworlder was gone. The explosion lit up the sky, a brilliant flash of light that could be seen for miles. Yarok and his team watched from a distance, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of what the Deathworlder had done. "It's over," Yarok said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're gone." The young man who had betrayed them sank to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "This is my fault," he said. "If I hadn't betrayed you, they might still be alive." Yarok placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "What's done is done. The Deathworlder made their choice, and they saved us all. Now it's up to us to honor their sacrifice." The group returned to their outpost, their spirits low but their resolve unshaken. They knew the Empire's forces on the planet had been destroyed, but the war was far from over. Over the next few days, the humans worked tirelessly to regroup and prepare for the next phase of their fight. They used the intelligence they had gathered to plan their next move, determined to strike back at the Empire with everything they had. But as they prepared, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The Deathworlder had been a powerful ally, and their absence left a void that couldn't be filled. One night, as Yarrick sat alone in the outpost, he heard a faint sound outside. He grabbed his weapon and stepped out, his senses on high alert. What he saw made his heart stop. Standing in the shadows was the Deathworlder, their body battered and broken but still alive. Yarrick rushed to their side, his mind racing with questions. How are you still alive?" The Deathworlder smiled weakly. "The weapon didn't kill me. It changed me. I'm not the same as I was before." Yarrick helped the Deathworlder inside, where the others quickly gathered around. The young man who had betrayed them looked at the Deathworlder with a mixture of relief and guilt. "I'm sorry," he said. "For everything." The Deathworlder nodded. "You made a mistake, but you've also shown courage. That's what matters now." As the Deathworlder recovered, they explained what had happened. The weapon had drained their life force, but it had also infused them with a new kind of energy, a power that could be used to fight the Empire. "I'm not as strong as I was before," the Deathworlder said. "But I can still help. And together, we can end this war." The group spent the next few days preparing for their final assault on the Empire's forces. The Deathworlder trained with the humans, teaching them new tactics and strategies. When the time came, they set out for the Empire's main base, a massive fortress that loomed over the landscape like a dark shadow. The battle was fierce, with the humans and the Deathworlder fighting side by side against overwhelming odds. The Deathworlder used their new powers to devastating effect, taking out entire squads of enemy soldiers with a single strike. But the Empire's forces were relentless, and the humans were soon pushed to their limits. As the battle raged on, the Deathworlder turned to Yarrick. "We need to take out their command center. If we can destroy it, we can cripple their forces." Yarrick nodded. "We'll cover you. Just get in there and do what you need to do." The Deathworlder fought their way to the command center, their body glowing with energy. They burst through the doors, their claws slashing through the enemy soldiers who stood in their way. Inside, they found the Empire's commander, a towering figure with cold, calculating eyes. "You're too late," the commander said. "The Empire cannot be stopped." The Deathworlder growled, their claws flexing. "We'll see about that." The two clashed in a brutal fight, their blows shaking the very foundations of the fortress. The Deathworlder fought with everything they had, but the commander was powerful, and the battle was far from over. The Deathworlder and the Empire's commander clashed in a furious battle, their blows shaking the walls of the command center. The Deathworlder's claws struck with precision, but the commander's armor absorbed most of the damage. The commander retaliated with powerful strikes, each one forcing the Deathworlder to retreat. Despite their injuries, the Deathworlder refused to back down. They channeled the energy from the weapon, their body glowing brighter with each passing moment. With a roar, they launched themselves at the commander, their claws tearing through the armor and striking the flesh beneath. The commander staggered, their cold eyes widening in shock. "You cannot defeat me," they hissed, but their voice was weaker now. The Deathworlder didn't respond. They struck again, their claws piercing the commander's chest. The commander fell to their knees, their body convulsing as the life drained from them. With the commander defeated, the Deathworlder turned their attention to the command center's controls. They activated the self-destruct sequence, knowing it was the only way to ensure the Empire's forces on the planet were completely destroyed. An alarm blared, and a robotic voice echoed through the fortress. "Self-destruct sequence initiated. All personnel must evacuate immediately." The Deathworlder stumbled out of the command center, their body weak and battered. They could hear the sounds of battle outside, the humans fighting valiantly against the Empire's remaining forces. Yarrick and his team were holding their ground, but they were outnumbered and running low on ammunition. The Deathworlder knew they had to act fast. Summoning the last of their strength, the Deathworlder unleashed a burst of energy, knocking back the enemy soldiers and giving the humans a chance to regroup. "We need to get out of here," Yarrick shouted. "The whole place is going to blow." The group retreated, fighting their way through the fortress as the self-destruct countdown continued. The Deathworlders stayed behind, ensuring the humans made it to safety. As the humans reached the edge of the fortress, they turned back to see the Deathworlder standing in the doorway, their body glowing faintly. "What are you doing?" Yarrick yelled. "Come on." The Deathworlders shook their head. "I'm not strong enough to make it." "But you can. Go." Yarrick hesitated, his heart heavy with grief. "We can't leave you." The Deathworlder smiled weakly. "You're not leaving me. You're carrying on the fight. Now go." The humans turned and ran, their eyes filled with tears. As they reached a safe distance, the fortress exploded in a massive fireball, the shockwave knocking them off their feet. When the dust settled, the fortress was gone, reduced to rubble. The Empire's forces on the planet had been wiped out, but the cost had been high. The humans stood in silence, their hearts heavy with the loss of their friend and ally. "They gave everything to save us," Yarrick said, his voice choked with emotion. "We can't let their sacrifice be in vain." The group returned to their outpost, their spirits low but their resolve unshaken. They knew the war was far from over, but they also knew they had struck a major blow against the Empire. Over the next few days, they worked to rebuild and regroup, using the intelligence they had gathered to plan their next move. The young man who had betrayed them worked tirelessly, determined to prove himself and honor the Deathworlders' sacrifice. One night, as Yarrick sat alone in the outpost, he heard a faint sound outside. He grabbed his weapon and stepped out, his senses on high alert. What he saw made his heart stop. Standing in the shadows was the Deathworlder, their body battered and broken but still alive. Yarrick rushed to their side, his mind racing with questions. How are you still alive?" The Deathworlder smiled weakly. "The weapon didn't kill me. It changed me. I'm not the same as I was before." Yarrick helped the Deathworlder inside, where the others quickly gathered around. The young man who had betrayed them looked at the Deathworlder with a mixture of relief and guilt. "I'm sorry," he said. "For everything." The Deathworlder nodded. "You made a mistake, but you've also shown courage. That's what matters now." As the Deathworlder recovered, they explained what had happened. The weapon had drained their life force, but it had also infused them with a new kind of energy, a power that could be used to fight the Empire. "I'm not as strong as I was before," the Deathworlder said. "But I can still help. And together, we can end this war." The Deathworlder's return brought a renewed sense of hope to the humans. Though they were weakened, their presence was a reminder of the resilience and determination that had brought them this far. The group spent the next few weeks preparing for their final mission, a direct assault on the Empire's Central Command, the heart of their operations in the galaxy. The Deathworlder, despite their diminished strength, took on a leadership role, guiding the humans in strategy and training. They shared stories of their people, their struggles, and their ultimate downfall, instilling in the humans a deeper understanding of what they were fighting for. "The Empire thrives on fear and division," the Deathworlder said one evening as the group gathered around a makeshift table. "But we have something they don't: unity. Remember that when we face them." The young man who had once betrayed them spoke up. "I've been thinking about what you said. About redemption. I want to be part of this mission. I want to prove that I'm worthy of your trust." The Deathworlder nodded. "Redemption isn't given. It's earned. This is your chance." When the day of the mission arrived, the group moved with precision and purpose. They infiltrated the Empire's Central Command, a massive space station orbiting a distant planet. The Deathworlder led the way, their new energy allowing them to bypass security systems and disable enemy defenses. The station was heavily guarded, but the humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope. They knew this was their last chance to end the Empire's tyranny. As they reached the core of the station, the Deathworlder turned to Yarrick. "This is where we part ways again. I'll handle the core. You need to get your team out of here." Yarrick shook his head. "Not this time. We're in this together, till the end." The Deathworlder hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. But stay close, and be ready for anything." The core was a massive chamber filled with swirling energy and towering machinery. At its center was the Empire's leader, a cold, calculating figure who watched them with disdain. "You've come far," the leader said, their voice echoing through the chamber. "But this is where your journey ends." The Deathworlders stepped forward, their body glowing with energy. "This ends now. For my people. For theirs. For everyone you've destroyed." The leader laughed, a hollow, chilling sound. "You think you can defeat me? You're nothing but a relic of a dead race." The Deathworlder didn't respond. They charged at the leader, their claws slashing through the air. The leader countered with a blast of energy, sending the Deathworlder flying. Yarrick and his team opened fire, but their weapons had little effect. The leader was too powerful, their defenses too strong. The Deathworlder struggled to their feet, their body flickering with energy. They knew they had one last chance.